Alright, hello everyone, you're watching You Got It with Warrior Woman 91. My haircut. It's a little shorter than I wanted, and the bangs are a little bit shorter than I wanted, but whatever. It's all good. You guys get to see my face and my unhappy face as I'm dealing with the fact that my hair isn't quite the way I wanted it. But that's beside the point. Today I want to talk about one of the things that's been going on in the news. You might have seen me discussing it on Twitter a little bit. I was really quite disturbed by this subject. I'm actually talking about this instead of what I was originally going to talk about, just because it bothered me so much. So today we're going to be talking about John Crist. John Crist, the comedian. So John Crist is a Christian comedian. Basically meaning he is a comedian that professes to be Christian and also makes it a part of his act. Usually you find either one or the other. You find a comedian who happens to be Christian, or you find a Christian that sometimes does comedy. This guy was an actual comedian who made Christianity a part of his act, and he was very, very popular among Christian circles as well. I actually have one of his DVDs, and that just kind of brings me to the subject of, or the title of this video, which is why I'm not throwing away my John Crist DVD. Well, why would I want to? Well, you guys may have seen in the news that John Crist has been accused of sexual harassment, and pretty severe sexual harassment. This isn't like, oh, he flicked my ear when I didn't like it, or he catcalled somebody or whatever. No, this was like legit bad stuff. This was, it was to the point that I know there are some people, there are some younger members of my audience that are watching the show, but as we all know, I don't like to beat around the bush. John Crist was basically soliciting women, manipulating them, exchanging tickets to his concerts and shows in exchange for sexual favors. He was an actual predator, manipulating, especially, where there was one woman came out, I believe she was underage. I'm not 100% sure, but she was referring to a high school project. So I'm not sure of her age. You guys can go look that up and confirm whether she was underage or not. Largely, these are complaints from adult women, some of them married, some of them in committed relationships, wondering, why is this guy soliciting me? Well, that's a problem, you guys, especially when somebody professes to be a Christian. That's kind of a big problem. So, why would I want to keep this guy's DVD? Well, there's a lot of different reasons. Like, when I initially just want to address, there's a lot of Christians out there that are talking about how we need to forgive John Crist, how John Crist is worthy of forgiveness. It doesn't matter how bad the things were that he did, he still needs to be forgiven. He still is a human being who makes mistakes. We can't be putting him on a pedestal and saying that, oh, have you ever sinned? And, I think it's a problem when we talk about how John Crist needs forgiveness, and I 100% agree. There isn't, like, forgiveness is a thing that everybody gets, and it doesn't matter who committed the crime or who did the despicable act. It's a difficult thing for me to actually deal with, because it's, there's people that have done wrong things to me that I continue to have struggles forgiving. But that doesn't mean they don't deserve forgiveness. That doesn't mean I am not required to forgive. But one thing that Christians often overlook is forgiveness does not mean forgetfulness, and it does not mean accepting somebody back into your life at the same level that they may have been prior to the sinful act. There are consequences to doing these things. There are consequences to behaving in a heinous manner, as John Crist did. There are consequences for being a sexual predator, which is what John Crist is. Pursuing young women, manipulating them, breaking up marriages, breaking up relationships, so that he can have temporary pleasure. That's just over the line. Kelly, he apologized. What? Like, he apologized. He has repented. So that means that we not only have to forgive him, keep the DVD and everything is fine. Like, clean slate, everything's good. No, wait a minute. I read the apology. I read the apology first. I read the apology and it did seem legit. It seemed contrite. It seemed, well, to a certain extent, I should say, it seemed contrite. There was one line in it that seemed a little bit less than. But the problem with his apology is it bleeds into the behavior that he has been caught in the middle of. So my question really is John Crist really sorry? Has he really repented? I don't know. I think that he is sorry that he got caught. However, the behavior that was described by I counted 18 different women who have come forward with stories, because there were originally 5 and then there were 11 more that came and talked to one of the women who was one of the original 5, and then there were 2 ex-girlfriends in addition. It's a bad deal, guys. My problem is, yes, he apologized, but the behavior described is behavior that involves manipulation, that involves a certain amount of contrition, and that involves a certain amount of understanding this is what he's doing. Like, it's not, people like to, well, he's got an addiction. He's got a sexual addiction. He's got a sexual, it's a problem. That makes it sound like it's an illness that he can't control. This guy is very, very smart. He manipulated women on a level of premeditation. Like, he knew exactly what he's doing. There's no pretending like he didn't know, like, oh, I didn't realize, or, oh, I didn't know she was with this person. Like, he's shaking hands with the boyfriends of these women, and then the next day he's taking those girlfriends out and trying to get them to perform sexual acts with him. And these are just the women who were bothered by it. Can you imagine how many women that weren't bothered by it, that like went through with it and were fine with it? This is a big problem, you guys. So what I am trying to say is, yes, John Crist deserves forgiveness. I don't know that his apology is one of legitimacy. I don't know that it is a genuine apology. I think it's an apology that he had to give because he was caught. I think that he would have continued in his bad behavior and it would have gotten, consistently more out of control as things went along. I don't see any other way to read this, because he also states that he's had therapy, he's been going to see a shrink, he's been getting medical assistance to deal with this, and that's all just that's fine and good, but it just kind of goes to my point that he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that what he was doing was wrong, and he continued to do it, and it escalated beyond what is acceptable. When I do not say sexual predator lightly. When you are manipulating women and you are entrapping them and you are telling them, I will get you free tickets to my show if you will do X with me. I mean, hi Harvey Weinstein. It's like the Christian version of Harvey Weinstein. I mean, obviously he wasn't on that level, but that's still, it's on the same playing field of, I will give you a favor if you will do me this terrible thing. Like, that's why I have a problem with this idea that we can just have a clean slate and John Crist's career isn't over, he can come back and all that. No, John Crist's career as it was is gone, and that is a good thing, because it would seem to me that that's part of the reason, it's part of why his behavior was coddled for so long, because he was famous. It's okay, he's famous. You can't go against him. You can't go. That's a huge problem when somebody's disgusting behavior and manipulative behavior and power tripped behavior, whatever else it is, that kind of behavior cannot be excused because somebody is famous. And this is the ultimate reason why I'm making this video. It's not so much about John Crist, because I haven't really been a fan of his for years. It's not really about whether I should keep the DVD or not. It's not about whether he deserves forgiveness or not, because he does, you know, although the forgiveness does come with consequences. There are consequences for having committed these actions, and one of those consequences is his career. But my bigger point that I wanted to make on this video is how many people close to him knew about this. Apparently his family members knew about it. Apparently his sister was traveling with him for the purpose of prohibiting him from doing these things. If it's to the point where he has to be monitored by a family member while he's on tour, maybe he shouldn't be going on tour. Just saying. This is a problem. So, but he's famous. You can't just, give up on fame. You can't just No. This guy has a problem. He needs to be taken out of the spotlight. Now it's going to be permanently, because this is the thing. What you guys did by thinking you needed to like mollycoddle it, and if we just send somebody with him to make sure he's okay, and now you've ended his career by helping him along. Because before, if you had just pull him out, get him the help he needs, get him away from this environment that enables him to, prey on these women. Get him out of there immediately. Instead of doing that, no. Yeah, we can't. We don't want to, ruin his career. We don't want to destroy everything. Now you have. Now his career is ruined. He is never going to be able to go back into this kind of comedy again. He could potentially, if he gets back into secular comedy, maybe in 10 years. But in this environment that we live in, where Me Too and hashtag Time's Up and all of the rest of it is prevalent, he's out of a job. His career, he's been canceled. John Crist has been canceled by himself. And I'm not necessarily blaming everybody else for his actions, but there is a certain level of responsibility when you find out somebody is doing this thing. I've been in this situation where I've found out that somebody is behaving in this way, and you have to tell somebody. You can't just pretend. I've been in this situation more than I would like to recount. You have to tell somebody, because what about the next woman that gets manipulated or abused or whatever? What about you might be like, I'm 28. I can handle myself. Guy mistreats me. It's not difficult for me to say, get out. What about somebody 10 years younger than me that doesn't know any better? Like, I remember being 21 and not knowing how to deal with it, and not knowing how to respond to it, and thinking that it was my fault, that the fact that I was even propositioned was somehow my fault. No. What is your responsibility is to tell somebody. That is your only responsibility here, to behave well and to tell somebody that this person did something bad. So John Crist's sister should not have been going with him. She should have been calling the authorities and telling them that he needs to be removed. Unless his actions were criminal, perhaps that kind of authority isn't the right one, but call the churches that he's a part of. In the Christian community, gossip flies. And this is something that the final point I want to drive home is, women, tell somebody. Gossip is not bad in this situation. When you are being mistreated, you tell somebody. I don't care who it is. Tell somebody, and tell somebody who can do something. But tell somebody, because then the next person, even if you are too scared to go to a higher authority, the next person, tell somebody who won't be, who can go on your behalf, or whatever it happens to be. But you have to say something, because you are being complicit in the problem if you are not saying something. You are putting other women at risk by not saying something. You are putting other women at risk when you know your brother is behaving this way, and you are continuing to enable him to be in these situations in which he manipulates and preys upon women. It's just a complete disaster that all of this was just swept under the rug. Allegedly it was an open secret. Okay, if it's an open secret, then then it's gone too far. Like, who is going to step forward and say no? How many other comedians that toured with him that knew about this that didn't do anything? How many other people around him knew this was going on? People in the leadership in the churches, people who saw it happening and didn't do anything because he's famous. You can't touch him. You can't touch him. You know what? Harvey Weinstein, one of the most powerful men in the world, now in jail. He's gone. He's been canceled. Epstein didn't kill himself, but he's been canceled. Also, one of the most powerful men in the world, canceled. I'm sure that eventually George Soros will be canceled one of these years. But yeah, it's you can't allow that to be intimidating. You just can't. And I'm not trying to, like, again, it's not the women, it's not your fault if you're behaving normally and somebody is propositioning you. It is also not your fault if you are acting semi-provocatively. It depends on the level, but it's not your fault if somebody grabs you and assaults you. There is no scenario under which that is acceptable. Now, there's situations where you might be asking for it. That does not mean that you deserved it. That does not mean it was appropriate for that person to behave in that way. Especially though, if you're not asking, like if you are just, at your office or in a generic scenario and somebody is harassing you, that is not your fault. And that's something that I had to drive home to myself when it happened to me, that it was not me. It was that person behaving inappropriately, knowing that they were, and taking advantage of somebody young who didn't know any better. So that is my little rant and spiel on John Crist. It's very frustrating to me to hear that family members of his knew and didn't do anything about it, that people in the church clearly knew and didn't do anything about it. So many people knew and didn't do anything about it, and that just makes me sick. That the fame of any individual that could just take such precedence in people's minds, that he could become such an idol for people to, rise above the moral standings that are preached in the church, that nobody did anything. It's incredibly frustrating. And shout out to Charisma, who actually broke the story and had the courage to put that out, because I'm kind of enraged by that nobody did anything, and he's been doing this for years, and the fact that it was an open secret, that it's infuriating. Now, to get to my title of my video is why I'm not throwing away my John Crist video. The reason why I'm not throwing it away is because if I threw John Crist's video or DVD out, or whatever it is, I would have to throw out everything, because every person in Hollywood, every movie that's made is made by somebody who has behaved in this way, or has behaved worse, or has behaved similarly, or whatever. And so it's just not something that's feasible to be able to go through and morally pick through and say, I can and I can't. I'm not going to throw it away. I'm not going to be able to watch it in the same way. It's probably going to take me 5 to 10 years to be able to watch it again and enjoy it. And I may never be able to, because it is a personal issue for me. But I don't think that you have to throw away your John Crist DVD. Any more than I think you have to throw away your Avengers movie because Joss Whedon allegedly sexually harassed women. I don't think you have to throw away everything that a person did just because they turned out to be bad. I mean, at the time that you bought the DVD, you had no idea. So I don't think you have to. I think that if you are, I don't think it's wrong for you to get rid of it. But I don't think it's a requirement. I don't think, oh my gosh, now we have to go and burn all of the John Crist DVDs and we have to do this and that. I still think, he was an artist and it was an art form. Comedy is a form of art, and I don't think you have to throw it all away just because of something like this. Even though it didn't, how his behavior was egregious. But it's something that has to be dealt with on a larger scale, I think, in in churches and in institutions like that. It's kind of how I feel about the Catholic Church and the sexual predators in the Catholic Church, that, you know, people just seem to let that slide. No problems there. Yeah, it's a larger problem in institutions where people gain power. There has to be checks and balances. It's just the same as the government. Just because it's not, you know, under the Constitution doesn't mean that there shouldn't be checks and balances in whatever institution you work in. There has to be somebody who can say, hey, this is not acceptable. This is not okay. There has to be that kind of thing. Otherwise, you have what happens with John Crist. He runs rampant until it gets out to everybody else, and then everybody else has to come in and say, wrong. No, you can't do this. This is not acceptable. It's kind of just my final analogy here is somebody actually explained this to me. When you are young and you're a kid and you're receiving discipline, the philosophy is that if you are receiving it when you're young and when you're in the home with somebody who cares about you, it's better to receive it there than it is to receive it out in public and it's a police officer disciplining you. It's way better for you to deal with it quietly at home, in whatever your problem is, to deal with it there than it is to deal with it out in the public. And that is what John Crist learned. Had his issues been dealt with quietly, privately, had he slowly faded out and dealt with it personally, then his career would not be over. How does he expect that he's going to be able to get a job after this anywhere? Because he's got a history of being a sexual predator. How are you going to do that? But, you know, his fame was more important than the lives and the well-being of those women that he harassed, apparently. And his fame was more important than his own life, apparently, because now his life is destroyed. So I'm just on a roundabout thing. You don't have to throw your DVD away, but you do have to take seriously what these allegations against him that he has now admitted are true. You have to take it seriously. Otherwise, you know, you're just in denial. There just needs to be more accountability in these institutions. You can't have predators running around rampant and using fame as an excuse. So this was a little bit of a darker episode. I'm sure next time when I talk about Gavin Newsom and how much I love him, you guys will enjoy that one as well. But I do want to give you guys a few announcements about some guests that are coming up. I already kind of talked about them on Twitter. I'm currently talking with Spencer Clavin. Hopefully he will be coming back on the show soon. You guys have not gotten to see him on video, and I do need to have him on video. So I'm hoping to have him back. Next week should be Alicia Krause, if we can nail down a time for that. So be on the lookout for Alicia Krause and her interview on this show. I've also got my good friend Donovan Fowler. We're actually, today, as I'm recording this, I'm going to be recording a show with him in about 30 minutes after I record this show. So he's going to be doing a top 10 Christmas movies, and that should be coming out. I probably won't release that episode until December, but he will be on the show for sure coming up in the next month and a half or so. And Jacob Berry, I'm sure, will return to the show. I'll have my sister back on. I'm talking to, who was the other person? I'm talking to Jessica. Okay, Jessica at Heck Jessica on Twitter should be coming on in the next 2 weeks, maybe. We'll see. I'm not sure. We're still trying to nail down a time. Schedules are always in conflict, all over the place. And I should be recording an episode with Ian Hayworth over on the Ian Hayworth show. So you've got a lot of content coming. Get excited. I will be talking about Gavin Newsom on one of these episodes and explaining the fire and power outage situation in California. So be on the lookout for that. And I will talk to you guys on the next episode.